from the Frontier Wrestling Alliance headquarters in London, this is FWA Radio with Dave Bradshaw.
Hello everybody and welcome along to another episode of FWA Radio. Dave Bradshaw here with you in the studio again, and we are just over a week away now from New Frontiers at the Broxbourne Civic Hall, a night that is shaping up to be one of the most important and historic in the history of British wrestling. Now, of course, there's no one to whom it means more that night in Broxbourne than Phil Flash Barker. He's going to be the guest timekeeper at New Frontiers. Of course, he's a former British heavyweight champion. I spoke to Flash about the tumultuous time he's had in his own life in the past few years, and he's going to be telling us more about that in the interview you're going to hear in just a few minutes' time. Thanks for your emails. I'm going to hopefully read out a couple of those later if we have any time. Do keep them coming. If you have any questions for any of our future guests or any views you want to get off your chest about the FWA or wrestling as a whole, the email address, as ever, radio@fwauk.com. That's radio@fwauk.com. So that interview with Phil Flash Barker on the way in just a couple of minutes' time. First of all, though, here's this week's news. Jane has that for us.
FWA legend Phil Flash Barker will make his return to the company next Sunday at New Frontiers. The former British heavyweight champion will be the special guest timekeeper in the Broxbourne Civic Hall after FWA officials heard him tell this programme why he wanted the job so much. Barker will also be part of a special Q&A session before the show at the FWA Fan Slam, alongside Doug Williams, Martin Stone and Rockstar Spud. The full interview with Flash Barker can be heard immediately after this bulletin. The champion of Future Shock Wrestling, super styling Sam Bailey, suffered a serious cut to the head during an 8-man gauntlet match at Future Shock 36 in Macclesfield last weekend. But he was still able to pick up the victory for his team by pinning Chris Egan. Bailey went to hospital after the show and had the wound glued back together, but otherwise is unhurt. He's scheduled to team with Dave Rain against Lethal Dose in the main event of next week's FWA Unsigned show prior to New Frontiers. TNA's latest pay-per-view offering, Victory Road, received a mixed reaction from fans after its broadcast on Sunday night. The 3-hour event, headlined by Kurt Angle's submission victory over Mick Foley, came at the end of a turbulent week for the Orlando-based promotion. Co-founder Jeff Jarrett was sent home for personal reasons after rumours about his personal life were broadcast on a popular US radio show, causing parts of the pay-per-view to be changed at the last minute. But it wasn't all bad news for TNA this week. The company announced during the pay-per-view that it has finally signed former ECW champion Bobby Lashley to a contract. This weekend will be WWE's turn to present a pay-per-view. All of the Federation's titles will be on the line at Night of Champions, including CM Punk vs Jeff Hardy for the World Heavyweight belt, and a rematch from WrestleMania 24 as Randy Orton, John Cena and Triple H compete for the WWE title. The following night, WWE Raw will feature NBA superstar Shaquille O'Neal as its guest general manager. Aging Rockers ZZ Top took the reins this past week. The world's oldest wrestling promotion, Mexico's CMLL, will try to move on from the recent deaths of 2 of its mini-stars when it presents its only cage match of the year next Friday. The 9-man contest includes Hector Garza, Shocker, Black Warrior and 6 other big names, with the last man out of the cage being forced to shave his head bald. Meanwhile, the company's big 76th anniversary show in September looks set to be headlined by a mask versus hair match between Mystico and Negro Casas. Finally, British wrestler Ricky Hype won £10,000 this past Saturday night by winning BBC One's Total Wipeout. The Saturday night show, hosted by Richard Hammond, requires contestants to compete over a series of obstacle courses at a resort in Argentina. Hype beat 19 other contestants to win the prize and will return for the show's grand final later in the year.
Alright, thank you Jane, as ever. Now we're just a couple of moments away from that remarkable interview with Phil Flash Barker. I recorded it just a few days ago, and honestly, of all the interviews I've ever done, it's the most heart-wrenching I've ever done. Please do listen to it, it's going to be incredible. Just before we bring you that interview, another reminder of our email address. It's radio@fwauk.com. And we do have some guests coming up in the next couple of weeks who we would like your questions for. We've just found out that next week we're going to have Martin Stone, the governor of British Wrestling. He's going to be our guest in the studio. And of course, he's going to be just a couple of days away from his main event match against Doug Williams at New Frontiers. So if you have any questions for Martin, the email address, radio@fwauk.com. And we're still waiting for Tony Simpson. He's going to be coming now a couple of weeks after New Frontiers, so that you'll have time to ask him questions having seen the first show. So if you want to speak to Tony Simpson, the managing director of the FWA, the email address, radio@fwauk.com. All right, let's go on straight away then with that incredible interview. This was me talking to Phil Flash Barker. At the peak of his career in the old FWA, Phil Flash Barker was one of the most recognisable and most loved wrestlers on the UK circuit. His career reached its high point in March 2002 when he beat Doug Williams to become the FWA British Heavyweight Champion. But that was over 7 years ago now, and soon enough Flash Barker had to retire through injury. Since then, his life's taken a number of twists and turns that would have destroyed lesser men, but Flash is no ordinary man, and he's determined to return to the one place where life has always made sense for him, under the spotlight in the wrestling ring. Phil, nice to have you with us.
It's nice to be here, thank you.
We've got a lot to talk about, not a lot of time to do it, but let's just, before we go into your role in the old FWA, let's talk about your early career, because obviously you had a very well-established career before the FWA even started up. I understand in your early days you had quite a lot to do with William Regal, Dave Finlay and several others. Tell us about that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, when I first started off, back in '89, I believe, just after it came off TV. I started working for Dan Whitings with Max Crabtree. So I've been on the shows with Big Daddy and all that, and I met with those guys. I worked for Scott Conway. And after I trained, because I trained for about 6 months, and the three guys that trained me, one was a bloke called Colin Groves, the other one was a bloke called Big John Prater, and Carl Kramer. So I always remember when I first went down to the first gym, I'd just finished doing karate and I'd done judo, so I was pretty well-rounded with martial arts and knew how to fall, etc. And they sort of threw me about a bit, and they told me to come back within 3 weeks, so I did, and then they started training us, and for the first, 3 months, I just got battered. Every time I went down there, they battered me, and it was a test just to make sure I wanted to, that I'd come back.
What was it that made you want to be a wrestler, particularly when you were suffering all that abuse week after week?
I think it's this, as a child, we all do, I used to watch it on a Saturday, and, I loved it like everyone else. These guys, I used to watch Rocco, and idols like my idols, which was Steve Gray, Mark Rocco, and to a certain degree Dave Finlay and Pat Roach. I thought these were just supermen, and they inspired me, and it was something extraordinary. And obviously I finished doing the martial arts, and I just thought, it was something I always wanted to do. And at the time I was working in an office, and I thought, and I had this thought, a little bit of epiphany, and I thought, if I'm sitting in the same chair in 50 years' time and I haven't actually followed my dream, what a waste of my life.